Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
The tassel on my graduation cap itched against my neck. I hadn't adjusted it since the ceremony ended. It just hummed there, forgotten, like the applause I never received. The lot outside Kennedy High was still buzzing with laughter and camera flashes. Cars idled with open trunks and open arms, mothers pinning boutonnieres back on for photos, fathers clapping their sons on the back like they were made of stone and pride. Through the windshield of my rusty Toyota, I watched it all play out like a silent film I wasn't cast in. I reached into the greasy brown bag beside me and pulled out the lukewarm burger. One bite and mustard leaked onto my shirt. The only white button-up I owned, one size too small, cups digging into my wrists. I took a swig of flat Pepsi and stared ahead, unblinking. They didn't come. Not even a text. Not even a lie to soften the truth. My mother had said just yesterday, without raising her eyes from her crossword, graduation's mostly symbolic, Miles. Besides, your father and I have bridge on Saturday nights. Bridge. As if a game of cards could shuffle past 18 years and a cap and gown. I turned the radio on, then off again. I couldn't bear the happy voices or worse, those sweeping, sentimental songs about beginnings. My beginning felt more like an ending, one I was driving straight into, alone. A knock on the driver's side window made me jolt, ketchup smearing across the sleeve I just wiped my mouth with. I looked up, startled. Principal Clemens stood there, a hand shielding his eyes from the sun. His gray tie was loosened, jacket slung over one shoulder. He smiled, not the kind you give to a student, but one meant for someone quietly drowning. I rolled the window down halfway. Didn't mean to scare you, he said gently. Mind if I sit for a minute? I blinked. In here? Sure. Unless the guest seat is reserved. I nodded and he opened the passenger door and slid in. The scent of old fries and cheap cologne mingled as the door clicked shut. He looked around. Cozy, he said, half smiling. I didn't respond. I couldn't find the words. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small granola bar. That invisible seat, the one you save, hoping they'll show up anyway. My throat tightened. I hadn't told anyone I'd left 2 tickets at the door. But he knew. Somehow he knew. Thought I'd check on you, he said after a pause. You were always good at disappearing. I guess I had a lot of practice. He looked at me then, not like a principal, but like a man who'd been where I was. You shouldn't have had to. I looked away, blinking hard. Outside, another graduate was lifted off the ground in a bear hug. A camera clicked. A father wiped his eyes with pride. I took another bite of the burger, swallowing around the knot in my chest. He reached into his coat again, pulling out a creased photo. This is me, 1988. See the empty chair beside me? He held it toward me. The image showed a younger, awkward version of Clemens, alone in the front row. Cap askew, eyes not on the camera, but on something far off. The chair next to him was conspicuously vacant. My mother called 5 minutes before the ceremony, he said. Told me she couldn't miss her hair appointment. Said I'd understand when I was older. I let out a breath I hadn't meant to. Did you? He shrugged. No, but I got older anyway. My parents said it wasn't necessary, I murmured. Bridge night. Clemens nodded slowly, as if he'd heard 100 versions of that sentence before, all equally heavy. Well, he said, placing the granola wrapper on the dash. Maybe it's time we stop waiting on people who never show up and start noticing the ones who do. His words didn't solve anything, but they settled something inside me. For the first time that evening, I didn't feel entirely alone. Outside, the parking lot had begun to thin. Balloons floated in the distance, tied to antennas and backpacks. Families walked off in pairs and groups. I sat with the one man who had noticed the shadow I'd become, and that somehow mattered more than 1,000 cheers. Clemens shifted in his seat and pulled a worn envelope from inside his jacket, sliding it onto the center console like a poker chip. It's not much, he said, but it's from all of us. I picked it up cautiously. Inside was a folded card, cheap paper, bent corners, but covered with slanted handwriting in blue and black ink. Messages from teachers I thought had forgotten my name. We saw your grind. Proud of you, Miles. Don't stop now. My throat tightened. At the bottom was a check. The amount stunned me. This'll cover your first semester's books, he said, watching my reaction. And maybe a little extra for coffee. Why? I whispered. Why go through the trouble? Clements leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Because when a kid works nights, lives without parental support, and still crushes calculus, somebody ought to give a damn. You think no one noticed, but we did. We always did. The words landed heavier than I was ready for. I blinked hard, pretending it was the sunlight that blurred my vision. But in the end, it didn't help and a stingy tear still ran down my cheeks. College won't be easy, he continued. But the difference now? You've got a foot in the door. Kick it open. I gripped the card tighter, the edges bending beneath my fingers. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. And maybe that was the real challenge, believing I was worth the effort. As Principal Clements opened the car door, the evening air spilled in, soft with the scent of cut grass and something distant, like rain that hadn't fallen yet. He rested his hand on the frame and looked at me one last time. There's a small gathering tonight, he said. Nothing formal, just a several school staff at the delicious eatery. You'd be welcome. I nodded, unsure if I meant it. My throat tightened. Then he walked away. I sat frozen, watching his figure shrink into the twilight. For the first time, I wasn't aching for my parents to arrive. I was aching because they never would. Yet strangers had done what family hadn't. They'd shown up, quietly, faithfully, in ways I'd been too hurt to see. I pulled the faculty-signed card from my lap, running a thumb over the familiar names and scribbled messages. Proud of you. Keep climbing. You matter. Their voices rose in my memory. Reeds's gentle scolding when I forgot lunch. Mr. Jin's over-explained math help. Coach Phillips's knowing nods when I walked in late with tired eyes. All small things. But together, they built something large. I looked at the car clock. 7:19 p.m. Delicious Eatery was just across town. The engine purred awake. For once, I didn't feel like an outsider circling the celebration. I was ready to step inside, not just the restaurant, but the truth I'd avoided. Sometimes, the family we need finds us when we least expect it. The bell above the door at Delicious Eatery jingled, far too cheerfully for the weight I carried on my shoulders. I hesitated just inside the doorway, my palms damp. Part of me still feared I didn't belong here, among teachers, among people who had lives and families to return to. What was I? A graduate with no one in the audience. The chatter quieted for a second. Then applause broke out, not loud or showy, but warm, honest. My chest tightened. But then Ms. Reeves waved me over with a bright smile. Miles, you came. Coach Phillips scooted his chair aside. Thought we'd lost you to that burger joint parking lot. Their laughter wasn't mocking. It was warm, like a fireplace I hadn't realized I'd been standing outside of all this time. As I slid into the seat, a waitress poured water, and someone handed me a menu. I looked around the table. Clements, Jin, even the janitor, Mr. Harris. All faces I'd seen every day, but never really seen. All people who had, in small ways, carried pieces of me across the finish line. I always knew you'd make it, Ms. Reeves said softly, raising her glass. You worked harder than most. A knot I hadn't known was inside me loosened. I didn't need balloons or applause. These quiet acknowledgments, this unflashy kindness, was celebration, real and earned. For the first time that day, I smiled without forcing it. Maybe the seat that had been empty at graduation had simply been waiting here.
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.